Had some food, made myself some tea, and I feel rejuvenated. So it's the same day. It's much later in the day, but I have a light set up behind my phone here, and I tried to angle it so that hopefully it shouldn't have too much glare on my glasses. Now I'm going to move into my acquisitions slash plans slash what's on my kind of knitting queue. So I did go to Europe, like I mentioned, for a week. I went to Amsterdam and I went to Berlin, and I've been to both of those places before about 2 years ago, but that was when I was just a baby knitter, so I hadn't knit too many wearable garments, and when I went that time I didn't do any yarny things, which is much different than this time. So this time that I went to a few yarn shops in each city. So I got quite a bit of yarn. I'll go through all of those now. So before I get into what I got when I went to Europe, I'll start out with what I got from my local yarn store. So about a month and a half ago now, my yarn shop was having a sale. I think everything was 20 or 25% off. So I went in and got some yarn. And the first thing that I got is this here. It's this alpaca worsted. Hopefully there isn't glare because I do have that light on. But this one here, it is 60% superfine alpaca and 40% muslin-free Highland wool. And this one here, it is like a heathered black color. So it's not like a stark black, which I like. I feel like that gives it some visual interest. And so I got 6 balls of this one. I have worked with this yarn before. I knit up the twist loop sweater by Other Loops, and I found that with that project I had lots of drape, and I think that comes from the alpaca. The pattern that I want to cast on with this yarn is the Solene or Solene cardigan by Moreca Knit. The main feature is that it has a double knit V-neck neckline, and then it has I-cord ties to tie up the front. I don't have anything in my closet that's like this, and I feel like knitting it in a dark color will make it more wearable, just because it is kind of a more unique construction to what I am used to wearing, I would say. I also feel like it can be dressed up. Like I can see myself wearing something like this in the winter with like if I have like a wool skirt and tights. It could even be a little bit festive coming into that season. I don't know if I will have this cast on and knit up in time for the holiday season. Either way, in a dark color, I feel like you can't really go wrong. So that one will be kind of like a timeless piece, I hope. And I also feel like with it having more drape, it'll kind of set it apart from some of my more kind of like rustic, more like structured, I would say, cardigans. I feel like with the V-neck tie, it gives a very kind of feminine, flowy, dainty vibe. So I think that having it in a soft alpaca with nice drape will just make it flow nicely. I'm very excited to cast this one on, and yeah, stay tuned for how that one works out. The next yarn that I got from my local yarn shop is this one here. So this is the Haynes Creek Heathers by the Gathering Yarn. It's 100% pure Highland wool, and this one is in an Aran weight. So it's showing up pretty true to color on camera here. So this one is a very vibrant blue. It's not quite cobalt. It leans a little bit more purple, I would say. But very excited to work with this yarn. I did get a sweater quantity of this one as well. This is actually the same yarn that I knit up my Johan Loop sweater with. And that one I used the DK weight version, and this is the Aran weight. And then it's the same yarn that I'm actually knitting up my color work mittens in just the leftover of the gray and the dark charcoal colorway. And this yarn, it's not itchy at all, and my skin's a little bit sensitive to texture, so I don't find it at all irritating, so definitely wanted to work with it again. So I got it in this Aran weight to try. And in terms of patterns for this, I was debating between a couple. The first one that I considered is the Tulip Loop sweater by Other Loops. At this point, I've knit 2 Other Loops patterns. I've knit the Johan Loop sweater as well as the Waffle Loop sweater. And both of those have become like MVPs in my wardrobe. I feel like it's not a risk knitting another Other Loops pattern just because I'm familiar with their writing style. And so far the garments that I've made, I've been pleased with. This one features tulip, or I've heard them called horseshoe cables along the front, and then the rest of it, it looks like it's kind of like a ribbed pattern. The main feature that's kind of different with this one is that it has like a Y cable along the back that kind of starts wide at the shoulders and narrows into the center of the back. It calls for an 18 stitch gauge, so that would be compatible with this yarn. Also, I was inspired by, if you follow Tokes Knits here on YouTube and on Instagram, she made a version with like this very like electric green colorway, and it just looks so good. And I like the idea of having bright colors, especially in the wintertime. I think that it's nice to have that pop of color when it's all gloomy and gray outside. So yeah, I haven't cast anything on, so I'm still not decided yet. I do have the Waffle Loop sweater, like I mentioned, from Other Loops. So if I'm wanting to wear kind of like a cable knit sweater, that's my kind of go-to. I don't know if I quite need 2 cable knit sweaters just yet. I am working on a cable knit cardigan, like I mentioned earlier. So we will see. This isn't a very different color than my other one, so it's not like it would be competing in my wardrobe. If I was to knit it in like a neutral beige, I'd be, you know, deciding between the 2. This would set it apart, so that's one thing. But the pattern that I think that I'm going to cast on with this yarn is the Esther sweater by Petite Knit. It has like an all over texture motif that's made with knits and pearls. And I don't have anything that has like a knit and pearl texture. I think that this would be something different in my wardrobe compared to cables. And I like the idea of it being just like a simple, looks like a drop shoulder silhouette. So then it's almost like a plain blue sweater, but then it has a little bit more of that interest with the kind of texture along the front. So I think that that's what I'm going to do. This one is also an 18 stitch gauge, so an Aran weight gauge. So yeah, stay tuned to see what I decide on, but it'll either be the Tulip Lip sweater by Other Loops or the Esther sweater by Petite Knit. And that's this one. So now we are getting into the stuff that I got during my Europe trip. So I'll talk about first one thing that I got that's kind of like knitting yarn adjacent, kind of. While I was in Amsterdam, there was an exhibit at the museum, and it was a textiles exhibit, and so it was called Unraveled: The Power and Politics of Textiles in Art. And afterwards I did get this book, which summarizes the exhibit, and then it has all of the artists that were featured as well as more on their backstory and their process. I'll just kind of show here kind of a snippet. So not necessarily knitting related, but textiles related. So I feel like it's kind of adjacent, I would say. I'll just kind of flip through and maybe show some other ones. So This is another one. It kind of just features more on the artists and their process. And I had a lot of fun going through the exhibit. I would say definitely if you are in Amsterdam, you should check it out. I don't know how long it is running for. It was actually recommended to me by Jimmy Does Knitting, who is here on YouTube. They're a YouTuber and knitwear designer. He's based out in Amsterdam, so I messaged him asking about any yarny, craftsy knitting things that I should do while I'm there. And he mentioned that this was showing at the museum. So yeah, I'm glad that I went, and I would recommend. Now we are gonna get into all the yarn that I purchased. So I'll give a sneak peek here. So this is a sneak peek of what I got in the color palettes. So I think I'll try to go in chronological order. So the first place that I went was Stephen and Penelope, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, and that is the yarn shop that is founded by Stephen West, very popular knitwear designer. I think he does a lot of shawls and MCALs and things like that. I didn't make any purchases at Stephen and Penelope, but it was good just to go and just see what was available. There was lots of hand-dyed yarn. There was a wall of Issayer yarn, which I was interested in looking at and feeling just because I haven't come across it in person where I live. So it was nice to take a look and see that. Lots of yarn options. I didn't get anything, but it was just nice to go and look at all the yarn and window shop, and yeah. So that was the first yarn shop that I went to. Didn't get anything. The second one that I went to was De Afstap, I believe. That's how it's pronounced. So that one was another one that was in Amsterdam, and they are a Rowan flagship store, so there was lots of Rowan to choose from. So when I was there, I did pick up 5 skeins of this yarn here. This is the Rowan Valley Tweed, and so this is what it looks like here. It is like a bluey, like a blue turquoise base, I would say, and then there's flecks of like yellow and green that you can see in that. So that is it all together there. So there is 207 meters per 50 grams, and I got 5. So that's like roughly just over 1,000 meters with this. With everything that I got, I haven't decided yet, but I'll kind of show all the yarn that I got, and then I'll talk about potential patterns that I could use for each, or using them together in a color work project. So that is this one here. In terms of the yarn shop, there was like tons of yarn to choose from. It wasn't a very big shop, but the yarn was more up my alley, I would say, compared to Stephen and Penelope. I'm not much of a, like, I don't use a lot of like hand-dyed yarn. It's nice to look at, but I am more into this kind of tweedy, twisted, 100% wool yarn. So that is this one. And yes, for reference, it is a different color than this one. So before you say that I got 2 sweater quantities of blue yarn, they are very different. So it justifies having 2 different sweater quantities. Also, while I was at De Afstap, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but while I was there, I got a couple balls of this yarn here. And this is like, it's giving Brat Summer, but I guess it would be Broadham now. Brinter? Okay, let's give that up. But it's like this yellow green base, very vibrant. And then if you look closely, the flecks are blue and brown, and it looks like a lighter cream as well. So I got, I think, 3 balls of this one. And if you watched my first podcast, you remember that I got 3 balls of this yarn. It's the same felted tweed, but this is the kind of color changing version. So this one, it transitions from blue to kind of like a purpley to a pink, rosy, peachy kind of color. But I thought that these colors along with this one would work really well together. And then speaking of Jimmy Does Knitting, he's working on a pattern for a color work scarf. So I'll show that here. I forget what it's going to be called, but I'll put that on the screen. It hasn't been published yet. It's going to be published at the beginning of December. I was thinking that I hold this yarn, or not hold, but I use this yarn along with this color changing so that it works up in the color work pattern. It's like a graphic, like striped pattern. You'll see here what it looks like. In his sample, he used like several different colors, alternating combinations, but I think that I'll just for the whole scarf use this held with this yarn here. So I think that will look pretty sick. And I do have like a black, like a large black wool coat that I wear in the winter time. And a lot of the time I'm wearing like black jeans, black boots. So I'm wearing a lot of black typically. So I think that this would look really cool as like a punchy pop of color to contrast my like ginormous wool coat. So yeah, that's what I think that I'm gonna make out of this one. But again, the pattern's not out yet. I haven't cast on, so we will see. I did go to one more yarn shop in Amsterdam. I'll put the name on the screen here. But I didn't end up getting anything. But again, it was nice to look and see all the different yarn that we can't get here in Canada. So it was nice to just window shop, but I didn't get anything at the last yarn shop. That was it for Amsterdam in terms of yarny things. So after that, we took a train and then went to Berlin, and we stayed with my good friend who now lives in Berlin. We spent, I think, 4 days, so not a super long trip, but it was nice having someone who is a local there, because then he just ended up being our like tour guide and showing us all the places to go. And then we did make some stops for yarn along the way. So the yarn shop that we went to is called Woolen Berlin, and I think out of all the yarn shops that I went to on this trip, this was my favorite. This one I think was the biggest also, so that might be playing into it, but they had a huge selection of yarn, and just, yeah, I just wanted to touch everything, look at all the colorways, and yeah, when we first entered, they had kind of like a little sales section near the front, and that is where I snagged this yarn here. So yeah, I mean, no words needed. So this here is the Piopardo by Rosarios 4. I have never heard of this brand. We don't have this to my knowledge. Or maybe we have it in Canada, but we don't have it like at any of my local yarn shops. I've never seen it. It says made in Portugal. And this is just like my dream colorway. If you have been watching, you know that purple is my favorite color. And this is just like the dreamiest combination of like purple, light purple, dark purple, pink, red, and yeah. When I saw this, even though I already have a purple cardigan, you can't get it. I mean, you can't get too much. So I had to get this. I did, I think, get all that was in the little bin, and there was 5. So I got all 5, and I think that this should be enough to make something. This one is 180 yards per 50 grams, and I got 5. So then I have however much that is. Be under 1,000, but I think it should be enough. I put this yarn into my cart and I was walking around the store just looking at the other yarns. And I was intrigued by the selection of mohair that they had. They had quite a few different brands and definitely ones that I haven't like touched IRL before. So it was nice to see the colors, because I know that there are some shops in Canada where I could order them online, but I still feel like it's nice to be able to see them in person, see the colorways, feel them, like see the comparisons between the two, which you can't get from just ordering online. I've always been wary of using mohair just because I do have sensitive skin, I would say, and I always hear about people talking about how mohair is so itchy. So then I've stayed away from it for the most part. I used that alpaca silk strand for my last project, the Korshaben vest. And alpaca doesn't typically bother me, so I was not being too risky in using that. But while I was there, I saw this yarn here, and I think that my light, okay, perfect. So this is the filcolana tilia. And I mean, I don't know, hopefully I don't regret it when I knit it up. So let me know in the comments if you've used this yarn before, how it's worn or like how it feels on the skin, because holding the ball, it does feel soft. I kind of went on a whim with getting this. I didn't have a pattern in mind when I was in the store, but I saw this colorway and knew that I had to have it. And then when I saw the selection of mohairs, I thought I might as well get one that kind of goes with this. So then I can kind of test it out and see if mohair is something that I like in garments. And I think that these two will go together quite well. It's like a very warm purple. I'm hoping that holding these together, I won't come across the same issue that I had with the Noro yarn, and that it was masking the color. Because even though this is kind of multicolored, it's a lot more subtle compared to the Noro. So I think that this will just kind of help it meld together nicely. And this is like quite a saturated color, so I don't think it'll wash it out too much. So I think that this will be a good pairing together. I think that's all. Yeah, so that's all. Actually, no, that's not all the yarn that I got. That's a lie. I did go to one other yarn shop. I'll put the name here. This was also in Berlin. And so for this one, I did get these yarns here. I got more, but I just put some in a basket just to show here. So this one here is the Natural Llama Fine by Lana Grossa. And this one just feels really soft. So this is like a dark kind of neutral brown color. And I got, I think, 5 balls of this one. And then in terms of the yardage, this one is 150 meters per 500 grams. So that is this one here. And I did also get this Set Suri by Lana Grossa. And again, I am just getting into using like fluffy strands with my yarn. And I like the kind of airiness that it gives, where you can have a higher gauge without the fabric being heavier. Like rather than using like an Aran weight single strand, you can use like a DK weight with a mohair to kind of fluff it up. I'm excited to kind of experiment with that and see how I like that in terms of garments. So I got this one here. This one is a like a neutral brown. It does pull a little bit purple, but yeah, it does pull a little bit purple. So we'll see how this goes in terms of pairing with this one. I think that when it's together, it'll just make it more of kind of like a warmer brown. It's not as purple as it's looking on camera in real life. It is brown. So, I mean, yeah, maybe if I hold it farther back, that kind of gives it a better, I'm trying to look down so you can't see the glare. If I hold it back a little bit, then I think that that gives it a more true to color representation. So for this one, I will say what I am planning to knit with it, or at least what I had in mind when I bought this yarn. The Njord hoodie, I think that's how you pronounce it, by Knit Studio. So this one is a like hood that also has long, I wanted to say straps, but I don't know what you'd call them. It's like a scarf and a hood in one, so you can wrap it around and tie it in the front. I don't really wear toques just because I've only knit one, and it was my very first knit project that I like ever made. And with that one, it fits, but I feel like it makes my head a weird shape, and it almost looks lumpy because like if I'm wearing it with my hair in extensions, just because there's like too much bulk underneath it. And I think that maybe it's too tight so you can like see the ripples of my hair through the hat. And yeah, I feel like I just don't typically wear toques. Even if I was to wear a toque, I don't usually wear ones that would be big enough to cover, like go down far enough to cover my ears, which I feel like is what I really want in terms of like a winter accessory. So I think that this will be good because I can just throw it on over and it's looser and larger. So I feel like it'll be fine to like fit over my hair without it being tight. And then because it's a tie closure, it's not going to feel like tight onto my head like a balaclava. And then I can just tie it as loose or as tight or as loose as I want. So I think that that'll give it a good like adjustability. I can see myself wearing that a lot. So I think that that'll be a good winter accessory. And then in terms of this color, it's like a very kind of neutral brown. I do have like a warm brown, almost like I guess cinnamon you would call it, wool coat. And then I have a black wool coat. And I think that this color, and I also have a blue quilted like puffer jacket. And I think that this color would match well with all three of those. So that's why I went for this color. Another option that I considered that's kind of still in that realm is the Cozy Cocoa Hood by Veronica Lindbergh. I think she also goes by Katova Kika on YouTube. It's a similar shape, different construction. So this one has a honeycomb textured stitch, and then it looks like it has a double knit border, and then it has long double knit ties that you can tie in a bow. The main thing that I liked about this pattern is the tie closure. I think that's just so cute. And I do like the honeycomb texture, but I worry if with it having the holes, whether that would make it so that air would be going through. And I feel like if it's cold enough for me to want to be wearing this, I probably don't want it to have holes. But yeah, that was just my thought process with that. I'll just show here another feature that I think is cool is that it has like optional clasps at the bottom. So it's kind of like a balaclava, but you don't have to like squeeze it over your whole head. So yeah, I like that. But what I think I'm going to do with this is I think I'm going to knit that Njord hoodie pattern. And then I think for the ties, I'm going to knit them a little bit longer so that I can tie them in a bow if I want to. similar to the Katova Kika pattern. So that is what I plan on doing with this yarn here. So then back to these yarns, what I plan on knitting up. So the first thing that I thought of that I could knit up with this one is I could knit the Terrazzo sweater, which is what I had originally wanted to knit with my Noro and alpaca silk. I think that I could give that a try with this one because this is a more, I mean, it's still multicolored, but it's like neutral. So I was thinking that I might do that pattern with this yarn here. The only thing is that I don't know if I will have enough yarn. I'm hoping so, because I think that I should be able to meet gauge, hopefully, holding the two strands together. I might swatch and see how close I get. Another thing that I'm considering is the fact that I crop everything, so whenever they give estimates for yardage, I'm always well underneath that just because I never knit it as long as what the pattern says. Like once I knit up the body, like I join in the round, I just stop reading the pattern. I just knit it until it's the right length. So I'm thinking that I should be okay to knit up this one. So that is option number 1. Option number 2 is the sweater number 28 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This one is another all over textured pattern. And it has a mock neck. I love the texture on this pattern. I like the drape and I do like a mock neck. I could knit this blue yarn into that pattern. This one is a 21 stitch gauge according to the pattern. And this yarn here says that it is 24 stitches. So this might be running it thin. I'll have to make a gauge swatch to see how that works up. But another option is if I don't meet gauge, I could maybe size up in the pattern and see if that will work it out. Again, hopefully I should have enough yarn. So the yarn that's called for in the pattern has 200 meters per 50 grams, and this one is 207 meters for 50 grams. So hopefully if I knit it cropped, then that should be enough, but I guess we will see. So that's one potential option. The third option is to knit the Urus slipover. I think that's how you pronounce it. And that one is a pattern by Agio Knit. And this one is really interesting in that it's a cable knit vest, but it's knit horizontally from side to side versus top down. So the cables are going across the chest. And this one has been kind of off and on my queue. Recently, another YouTuber I saw knit this one up. I think her channel is called Granola Bear Knits. So she knit up a version, and that just reminded me that this was a pattern that I had saved from earlier on this year. So it definitely inspired me to put that back on my active roster. With this pattern, it is a 21 stitch gauge. It has some honeycomb cables, and then it also has, I think these are horseshoe cables. I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but I just think it's such a cool construction having it knit side to side. It has a clasp closure on the side. I think that that just looks so cool. One thing that I'm hesitant about is that because it's knit horizontally, you can't adjust the length of it once you've started knitting. Like, you have to cast on for how long you want it to be from the beginning. Like I said, I do normally crop all my garments. So if I wanted to adjust the length, I think what I would do is I would just take out some of the honeycomb repeats. But I'd have to do some math to see, because yeah, once you start, then that's kind of it. If I chose to do this one, I'd have to do some forethought into how I wanted to knit this one up. And I was thinking, even though I said that I was going to knit the Njord hood with that, I think that this combination would also look really good in the Euro slipover. As you can tell by my Dagmar jacket saddle shoulder edition, I'm really into the darker colored knits. And this yarn is really, really soft. And I almost feel like I don't know if I want to say waste, but use it on like an accessory versus a garment that I can wear. But then also with the slipover, I'm going to be wearing it over top of a shirt or a sweater underneath. So it's not like I'd really be feeling it against my skin. Whereas I guess I would feel it more if I had it as a kind of tie, because then it's going to be around my face. So maybe it would make sense to make this into the hood, and then use something else to knit the Euro slipover. But it's a 21 stitch gauge, so I don't think that I would be able to meet that with this yarn. And then with the fact that I'm already going to have to be adjusting potentially the length, I don't want to play around too much with knitting it off gauge as well. And just because it's a construction that I'm not familiar with, so I kind of want to follow what the pattern says. So this one might not be enough, or it might not be thick enough to work with that. And then this one I could probably meet gauge holding it with the mohair. But if you watched my first podcast also, you'll see that I did knit up the clematis vest in a purple color. It's in hibernation right now because even though I did finish it, I do need to modify it just because the neckline and the shoulders and the overall body ended up being too big. So that one I do plan on re-knitting, and I don't know if I need 2 purple slipovers. So I think that if I had like a purple slipover, a purple sweater with the Terrazzo sweater, if I make this one, and then I have my purple cardigan, then they're at least different enough that I can justify having all of them. That is a point of debate. So either the Njord pullover or the Euro slipover. And the last pattern that I have that I want to cast on is the Stripe Overload cardigan by Spectacle Strick. I've knit one other pattern by this designer before, and that is the Moodiversary slipover. And I have knit another pattern similar to the Stripe Overload cardigan, which is ended up being a free pattern by Hobby Designs. And so I'll show that one here. That is my other purple cardigan that has that kind of collar detail. So I was even thinking that I could probably use that same pattern and just adapt it to make it striped so that it looks, because it looks very similar to the Stripe Overload pattern, and then that way I don't have to buy another knitting pattern. The only difference that might make me buy this pattern is that the button band is knit, like the stripes go horizontally and across the button band as well. So it's not one that you would pick up afterwards and knit like horizontally in a 1x1 rib, which is how I've done all my other button bands up until now. So that one is different in that sense. And so I might buy the pattern just to see how that construction is done. And then I can have that technique in my repertoire for the future. So I also like looking to like traditional clothing stores for inspiration for things that I want to hand knit. I came across this sweater or top by Aritzia that has this stripe motif. And I was drawn to the fact that the stripes are kind of irregular in the sense that there's like thick and thin stripes. And then I've also seen that similar motif before with another loops pattern. I'll insert the photo here. And so with this one, I forget what the name is, but I'll put it on the screen here. In this one, it again has like thinner and thicker kind of irregular stripes. And I think that that looks really cool. So what I was thinking is that I could use the Stripe Overload pattern as a base and then kind of apply that irregular stripe to it. And I was thinking that, I mean, these kind of do go well together. Or I was thinking that I could use this yarn and hold it together with another brown yarn and possibly a cream, so that it's kind of similar to how the Aritzia cardigan has the 3 colors. I think it's 3 colors. Just for the sake of visualizing it, this is the Rowan felted tweed. But even holding a brown and a blue together like this in that stripe pattern, I think would look cool. And then even having a cream stripe to be the kind of thinner stripes, similar to how the Aritzia sweater is. I think that that combination might look cool. Or even, like, is that, I don't know. Maybe if this one was the thin stripes, maybe that could look cool as well. I don't know. I could be convinced. So that's all the yarn that I got. And those are my tentative plans. I would say the ones that are more set in stone are the ones that I got from my local yarn shop. So the Solene cardigan as well as the Esther sweater are ones that I'm like have on my roster that I'm planning to knit up. And then I'm still deciding what I want to do with the yarn that I got in Europe. So comment below if you have any recommendations or any ideas. If you've used any of those yarns before, how they knit up, how they worked up, how they've worn. You can leave that down below. I would highly appreciate it. I did forget one other option. Another option would be the Norma sweater by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So that one is a 19 stitch gauge, but it's holding a sport with a lace. With that one, it is a colorwork sweater that is mainly neutral, and then it has these kind of stripes throughout. So then I was also thinking if I had a neutral, like beige or brown sweater, and then I had these, any combination of these honestly, as the kind of contrasts, then that would look cool. That one is a top-down raglan construction. And honestly with this one, the colorwork motif is very basic. So I feel like I could probably just, I mean, if I zoomed in, I can kind of see what the motif is. I feel like I could just incorporate that, like superimpose that onto my sweater number 9 light as a base pattern. And then I would have, I think, the same sweater. What are people's feelings about that? Because I feel like if I can figure out how to make it myself, do I need to buy the pattern? I don't know. But that is another option that that I might do with that yarn. And then the last thing that I'll talk about in terms of plans is one that I mentioned in my first knitting podcast. I'll go grab the yarn here. And actually in the time between filming earlier and now, I did actually cake up these skeins of yarn. So this will be my next cast on. I plan on casting this on tonight, actually. So this is going to be the Lume pullover by Sari Nordland. This is a yarn that I got earlier on in the summer at Knit City. They are both from the same farm. It's the I'll put the name on the screen here. I think it's called Desdero Ranch. They're based out of BC, and yeah. All of a sudden, I just decided that I want to have this done before Christmas so I can wear it as a Christmas sweater. And I think that these colors, because it's green, obviously that kind of reads a little bit festive. I feel like with the Lume pattern, it's more floral. So I feel like I can wear it in times other than the holidays without it feeling like I'm just wearing a holiday sweater. That is like a month and a week away. Can I do it? Stay tuned. So the Lume pullover is a worsted Aran weight colorwork yoke circular yoke pattern, which I haven't done a circular yoke before, so this will be my first time doing that. And this one, like I mentioned, has kind of like floral motifs, flowers, it looks like some vines, and some other kind of just like sparkles and things like that. So with this pattern, I think I might omit the last or the second last motif, the one that's kind of like circular and has the kind of cross looking thing on the inside. For some reason, whenever I look at that, all I can see is ochre. And like that's all I see when I look at it. So, and I'll insert a photo. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. So I might omit that. I might see if I can change it into something else that I like. And I don't know if I will do all the color work motifs on the sleeve. I might just pick one, just because I think that it looks a little bit busy around the sleeves. I might just do maybe just the vine around the sleeves. So this one is a very popular pattern. I'm sure you've heard of it before. For some reason, when it first came out, it came out before I started knitting, but when I first saw it as a beginner, as a baby knitter, it wasn't one that I had on my radar. I saw lots of people's knitting it, and I liked all of their versions. It just didn't seem like one that I wanted to knit up myself. But I don't know what happened. I feel like over the years, seeing it more and more, it's just like grown on me. So I am really excited to cast that one on. Follow me on Instagram if you want to get more of a real-time update of what I'm working on. I do typically share in my stories my swatches, my progress. When I had to do the sweater surgery for my Noro sweater, I did post my process on my stories. So if you want to see more, you can follow me on there. It's the same as here as Angela's Creative Corner. But I'll have that here. All right, so that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next episode. Bye!